In the last video, we learned how to use template functions. Today, we will learn a common data structure that you must know, and it is called arrays. So what are arrays? Arrays are data structures that allows you to store more than just one value. Let's go ahead and declare a variable called num1 and store inside it 12. Look at this variable, it stores only a single value. However, with an array you can store more than just one value. So here I prepared something about arrays that you must know. So before declaring an array, we must know these four things. First of all, arrays have constant length or constant size or fixed size. That means once you create an array of size 5, for example, you cannot increase this size or decrease this size. And also, arrays store elements of same type. That means once you declare an array that stores integers, you can only store integers inside that array. So this is a bit about arrays, and let's go ahead and try to create an array. So first of all, and the most common way to create an array is first of all to declare a variable that will be the size of the array. And this variable must be a constant variable, like this. So if I say const int size, this is the size of the array, I'm going to say 5. That means the array will store 5 elements. And so why also the variable is constant? Because this variable must not change. So because the array size is always constant. Now let's go down here and create an array of integers. So I'll say int array, this is the name of the variable, but what is the difference? I will add two square brackets. So once you add a square bracket like this, what the compiler will know, that this is an array. Now, inside of those square brackets, I'm going to write the size of the array, like this. And so now the compiler knows that I declared an array of size 5. So this array can only store 5 elements. Now how could we add elements inside this array? Well, we could do it automatically like this by adding the assignment operator and opening these curly brackets. And inside we could write, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I could only add 5 elements because the size is 5. But there is another way. We could use something called indexing in arrays. Now what is index in programming in general? So an index is the position of an element. Take a look at this array right here. The first element is at index 0. Let me write it like this. So it's at index 0. And why 0? Well, in programming we always start counting with 0. Okay, so the first element, which is 1, is at index 0 or position 0. Now the element 2 is at index 1. 3 is at index 2, 4 is at index 3, and 5 is at index 4. As you can see, these are the indexing of these elements, or the position of these elements. Now we could take advantage of indexing and use it to add elements inside the array. Now look what I'm going to do. I'm going down here, and what I'm going to write here is I'm going to say array, and inside square brackets, I will mention the index. I say 0, that means I'm accessing the element at index 0. So here I'm saying array at index 0. What I want to do with it? I want to add or assign to this index the value 1, like this. Now, if I go ahead and say something like array index 1, for example, that means I'm accessing the array at index 1. And what I'm going to add in there, I'm going to say 2, for example. Let's do the same thing for the others. So these are 5 elements. The index of these elements starts at 0 and ends at 4. Now, of course, I could go ahead and take these off like this, and let me remove this comment, and this still works, okay? So right here, we initialize an empty array, and after this, we assigned values to the array at the respective index. Now, how about displaying these values? We could do this using indexes. So let me leave this code right here, and I'm going down here, and I'm going to say something like cout element at, or how about I say index 0, like this. Now I want to display the element at index 0. How to do this? Well, I could use indexes. So if I say array index 0 like this, that means I am accessing the element at index 0. What the compiler will do is it will return the element at index 0, which is 1. So right here, index 0, what will happen? The element 1 will be displayed because it is the one at index 0. Now let me do the same thing for the others. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say 1 right here. And at index 1, what do we have? We have the number 2. So let me go ahead and copy for the rest of the numbers. So I'm going to say right here index 2, 3, 4. And here I'm going to say 4, 3, and 2. Like this. So what I'm doing is I'm accessing the elements at their respective index. Array index 2 has the number 3. Array index 3 has the number 4, and so on. Let's go ahead and run this code. So I'm going to first of all compile, and then I will launch. As you can see, at index 0 we have 1, at index 1 we have 2, and at index 2 we have 3, and so on. So this is how you can access elements using indexes, and of course display them using cout. Now how about I ask you to change the element at index 2 from 3 to 6? How could you do this? Well, it's actually very simple. All you need to do is write array, index 2, and use the assignment operator and say 6. Like this, what you did is you changed the value at this index. And of course, we also use this notation to assign values at this index. But here what we're doing, because there is an existing value which is 3, what we're doing here is that we're changing this value to 6. So let me go ahead and copy this one again, and let's see the before and after. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this, and I'm going to paste it right here, and let me fix the indentation. And now let's go ahead, run the code, and let's launch it. Okay, so this is the before right here, and this is the after. As you can see, at index 2 it's not anymore 3, it's 6. Okay, so this is how you can change element inside an array. Now this is a way to display the array using cout and indexes. This is a correct way. But what if the size of the array was 1,000, like this? You will write thousands of lines of code in order to access each element. So this is not efficient. What should we do here in this case? How could we display elements of the array in a more efficient way? Well, usually we use a for loop. Let's go ahead and see how to use a for loop. So I'm going to delete all of this, and look what I'm going to say. I'm going to say for. So I'm using a for loop to go through the array or iterate through the array. Like this, I could access each element of the array and display them. So how to do this? Well, we know that the first index is 0, right? So I'm going to initialize my initializer variable to 0. But now what should be the condition? Well, we know that the last index is 4. Well, now you might tell me, I don't know what's the last index. Well, let me tell you how we can find it. It's pretty simple. All you need to do is say size of the array, so maximum size of the array minus 1. So this is the last index, because look at here, the last index is 4, right? So, and the size of the array is 5. Always, the last index will be less than the size of the array by 1. So just remember that the last index is the size of the array minus 1. Okay? So, let's go ahead and build the condition. So the condition could be I less than size of the array. And now I could just simply increment I by 1 at each iteration. Now what I could do is use a cout. I could say something like index, and I say I like this, and after I could simply put a double point like this, and I'm going to say something like array index I. And let me do this like this, and I could say something like cout and L. So in your this is just simply to display the elements next to each other, but they have a certain space next to each other. But what's important here is this notation. So array index I. So we know that I will change at each iteration. At the beginning, I is equal to 0. So right here we are simply saying array at index 0. So what we have is we have 1. Then I will increment by 1, it will become I equal to 1. So array at index 1 is 2, and so on until I will become equal to 4. What will happen is that array index 4 will get 5. I will be incremented again by 1. It will become 5. So 5 less than size, and size is 5. So this condition will evaluate false, and the for loop will terminate. Let's go ahead and display the value, or excuse me, the results. Okay, so there they are. Let me just display them on a separate line. So let me just take this off. It's useless. So let me go ahead and also take this off. Okay, let's go ahead and display these and look at what we got. We got this same answer that we got before when we hard-coded the values, but this time we did it in a smart way and we used a for loop. And this is the right way of displaying an array in C++. Now usually when you work with arrays, you're going to use this notation or expression or code right here. You'll use it a lot to print an array. What's better to do here is that we need to store this code inside a function. So because functions are reusable and you can store code inside of them, so it makes sense for us to store this inside a function. So let's go ahead, take it off, and I'm going to create a function up here. Let me go ahead and delete this comment. I'm going to say something like void print array like this, and I'm going to give this function this code right here. Now why void? Because we're simply printing a message, we're not returning something specific. However, we have problems here because we need to pass our array and the size of the array. So basically, when you want to call this function, you want to give it your original array as well as the size of the array. Now how could we do this? Well, it's pretty simple. So inside this function, let's define two parameters. The first parameter will be the array. So because I have integer arrays, I'll say int array like this, and make sure to mention square brackets. So like this, the compiler will know that this is an array. And next to it, I could say size. So this is the size of the array. Now let's go down here and say print array and size. So what I'm just doing here, or it's print array, sorry. It's print array. So I'm invoking the function as well as passing it arguments. So the first argument will be my array, like this, and the size is the next argument. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this code, and after this I will explain what is special about arrays and functions. And so same value or same answer. Now what is the special thing about passing arrays to functions? Well, if you recall, we did this video about pass by value and pass by reference. So if you don't remember it, let me re-explain this. I want you to look at those two functions here. The first function is called a pass by value function because its parameter is passed by value. And when you say pass by value, that means when you pass a value to this function, what will happen is that the compiler will create a copy of the original value and work with the copy of this value. However, with a pass by reference function like this one, it has a special keyword like this ampersand right here. And what this means is that the compiler will directly access the original value inside memory and work with the original value. But let's go back with arrays. Arrays, when you pass them to functions, they are automatically passed by reference. That means the compiler will go directly to the memory and affect the original array there. So this is something special about arrays, that they are passed automatically by reference. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Of course, make sure to check out this video if you want to know more about pass by value and pass by reference. So this is what I wanted you to know about arrays when you pass them to a function, and make sure that each time you pass an array to a function, you give it its size, okay? Now here's a little exercise we could do. Create a program that allows the user to input numbers and store them inside an array of 3 elements, and then find the sum of the array. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to take all of this off, and let's go ahead and start with the exercise. First of all, we define the size of the array, and it's going to be 3 because 3 elements. Next, we'll define the array like this, and I'll say size, and like this, we define an empty array of size 3. Now let's go ahead and create a for loop, and I will allow the user to input 3 elements or 3 integers. That is why I said condition is I less than 3. Or we could say, for example, I less than size. So let's go ahead and say something like cout input number, like this. And look what I'm going to do right now. I could say cin array index I. What this means is that you're going to add this number inside the array at this certain index. At first, the index will be 0. That means you will add the input of the user at index 0. Now, it said here that we need to find the sum. Before finding the sum, let's go ahead and try this program without finding the sum. And first of all, let me go ahead and say print array to display the array, like this, and pass size. Let's go ahead and see what will happen. Okay, so I'm going to compile and then launch. Let's say 12, 13, and 14. Okay, these are the elements inside the array. Now let's find their sum. Now what I could do is that I could go ahead and create a function to do this. So I could say int sum and pass it an array like this. And of course, we need to pass the size of the array like this, int size. Inside this function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through the array. So I'm going to say int I equal to 0 and I less than size, then increment I by 1. Now let me go up here and create a variable called result. This variable will store the sum of the elements of the array. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say result plus equal to array index I. So at first I will be equal to 0, and so array index 0 will give us the first element. What I'm doing is I'm adding the element with this result variable. And so after repeating this loop multiple times, what it will do is it will add up all the elements together and find the sum. So what I could do here is I could say return result. Like this, I return the sum of the array. Now after printing the array, I could say something like cout, like this, sum of array, like this, and I could say sum, and of course pass it the array and the size of the array, like this. Now let's go ahead and see the result. So I'm going to compile, and then I'm going to launch, let's say 1, 2, and 3. And so sum of the array is 6, and these are the elements of the array. And this is it about arrays. I also might do a part 2 about arrays, which will be the next video. So make sure to stay tuned for the next array video. For now, I thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with me on this C++ tutorial. Now I invite you to click on one of these end screens that will appear right now, and I hope to see you in the next video.